Hi, welcome to Eye Openers. I'm your host, Brittany Drozd, and each week I bring you insightful conversations with entrepreneurs that will help you make more money, become a strong leader, and build a business culture that you're proud of. Grab your coffee and let's dive in.
I wanted to have you on because I love what you're doing for Providence in Rhode Island and your focus on using entrepreneurship to end poverty. I thought that was really remarkable. And so I want to hear not only about your group and your business, but how you look at that from a broader context and think about what it can do for our community. Yes. I'm very interested in learning more about that and what you're up to. But also you came in off a recommendation, right? So I had already reached out to you, but then this woman, Amy
Yes.
Who
Cafe.
I need to meet her. She's like, you got to speak to Keno. He's got to be Irish. That I'm all about it.
I need me lunch for that.
Yeah. She's out there advocating for you big time.
Yeah.
Give me like a 5 bullet point bio on who you are and why someone like Amy says, hey, you got to talk to Keno.
I don't know. I think Amy has to answer that for herself. So you should have her on next, right? Part 2, why Keno? So 5 bullet points. I was born in Jamaica, born and raised, tried to keep my accent. So if you really want to compliment me, just say, you know what? You sound Jamaican. I came to this wonderful country with a 10-year plan. I was supposed to go to school, give back 5 years to society, and then go home. That was my plan. I did not want to stay in the United States of America at all. Why? The beaches. I needed a real beach, right? So life happened. Finished school, got married. I was in Massachusetts, moved to Rhode Island, which I never thought I would ever move to Rhode Island. And then Providence, say to folks, I got infected by Providence. I can't explain it any other way. I just love this amazing city. Maybe the size-wise, it's like Jamaica. So I don't know. Okay. But 20 odd years later, I became a US citizen, married with 3 children, and I'm still here. And while I'm here, I just want to be here. You know what I mean? So it's not just living here, but be here and be present. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And my grandmother, who passed away in 2019, was a huge impact on my life. She, without a college education, she built businesses, built her house cash. She was a giver in the society. My dad's still an entrepreneur. He's doing amazing things there in Jamaica. So entrepreneurship is in my blood. And I studied electrical engineering and I went down the path of software development. So the Mullings Group, which is a software development company, we build custom applications for our clients. That's what brings home the money and that's what pays the bills. And I do enjoy it. We build meaningful solutions and we're trying to do things faster than anyone else to have those bragging rights. But entrepreneurship has just always been there. What does that mean? What do you do? How do you impact people? And one day when I was in corporate, no longer in corporate, but one day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine and I heard myself say these words. Businesses exist for 2 reasons and 2 reasons only. We're talking about profits and how much is enough. And I said it exists to solve problems and create a platform for individuals to be who they're supposed to be. To the extent that you do these and do these well and market that you're doing these well, you will make money. So making money is a consequence of doing good business. And after that, it's these 5 phrases came to my head. It was start a business, understand money, understand self, start a business, run a business, leave a legacy. Those 5 pillars. Like, all right, this is like almost 12 years ago. It's a long time. And it's like, all right, that makes sense, but so what? So these thoughts in my head. Fast forward, I created a course for strategic life planning because I had to do my own. And as I was explaining it to some friends of mine, they said, we don't understand what you mean. What's strategic life planning? So I'll create a class for you. And that was the beginning of IEL, Institute of Entrepreneurship and Leadership, where at first it was just how do you help regular people start a business? And fast forward a bit more, ask the why. Why are people starting a business? And why am I doing it? What makes me so special? And then it just came to me, end poverty through entrepreneurship, where poverty is defined as having lack and no hope of more. And so poverty is a hope thing. Someone can be wealthy and still be poor. It manifests as greed because you're holding on. I don't know when I'm going to lose this or if there's going to be more. So I have to hold on to this. And ironically, I live in the state of hope. And so we've been doing this for a number of years now and trying different things, pivoting different things. On Tuesday, actually, we have a class starting for tech founders. So if you're starting a business that's creating software, we're going to help you to end poverty in that arena. How do you move towards creating that dream of yours, that entrepreneurship business of yours. I was trying to do 5 bullets, but I can't.
No, yeah, the 25. That's all right.
Yeah.
The story. I went along with it. It was good. So I want to take one of your questions and turn it back on you. Why did you start your business? Why do you do what you do in terms of the Mullings Group?
In terms of the Mullings Group, wow. One, I just knew I had to. It was that drive of that entrepreneurship spirit. There is more. I am the captain of my ship, if you will. There is no ceiling. There is no barrier to. I'm Jamaican. The work ethic is legendary, and it's true. I literally had 5 jobs in college. So that was one thing. But second thing was you had to feed your family. I had a young family at the time, and so we had to do that. And the thing is, what am I good at? I do software development, and I love it. So that's where I started the Mullings Group. And as I've been developing the Mullings Group, it's been a test case for IEL. So as I do the Mullings Group, I'm teaching what I'm learning at IEL and hopefully infecting others with the philosophy and the message. And it's just evolved to how do we increase numbers in tech diversity? And so with my team, I spoke to you earlier about this, where we have a diverse team in probably 10 time zones. And I thought, yes, it's bragging rights that we're a Black-owned company, Black development team, a global development team. But is that something that's really bragging rights? It shouldn't be. It should be diverse. I shouldn't be saying the most women software developers I've worked with, I've hired them. That shouldn't be the thing. And so I decided how do I end poverty throughout my team? And so we've decided to do revenue share.
Bragging rights about your demographics of your team, but really creating real impact.
Exactly. How do you create real impact? It's beyond checking a box and doing a head count, but do they have extra dollars in their pocket that can change their world, where they're living, and make a difference for their family and increase the hope in their family?
So I want to dive more into this because people have a lot of different ideas about what it means to end poverty. And it's clearly so central to the way you envision your organization and you envision just being a person in the community. And you've got to do it's super important, a way to give back, but just a way to contribute, really. What about your model? It seems to just be so fluid. Like you do something in Mullings Group, you interact with people, you hire them, you bring them on, you're really bridging this diversity gap here in tech. And then you say, this worked well. I'm going to take that to EIL. So tell me about some of those things that you are doing. You're actively learning and then sharing. What is going really well for you as far as bridging the diversity gap and closing the poverty gap?
So what are some of the lessons I'm learning from the Mullings Group and bringing it over to IEL? What's going really well?
And that's working well.
It's a lot. Let me try and pick some of the highlights. Understanding chaos. And what does that mean? There's a course that we teach at IEL called How to Get Rid of Chaos and Clutter. And chaos, whether it's visual chaos, mental chaos, just having everything being thrown at you at the same time, or having folks dictate your calendar, understanding that in the Mullings Group and bringing that over to IEL, where I can say to future entrepreneurs, I know this for a fact, chaos will cost you money. Chaos will definitely cost you money. And last year, when we went through this growth boom, we hired a lot of people, we had to manage chaos. And that definitely worked. Second thing, it's being able to articulate self. And what I mean by that is, anyone hangs on me for a while, you'll hear a common theme and a common thread of purpose and understanding. And I'm confident with who I am because I know I don't know everything. And I'm okay with not knowing everything. And so there's that pressure of being a know-it-all. And when you're a person of color in any sphere, America tends to use you to represent that entire circle. So I've taken that burden off of myself. And so translating that to IEL, where I say the first half of entrepreneurship training is personal development. So if you are not able to articulate self, know your vision, your mission, your core values, then that will translate that chaos into your business. And it can destroy your family, literally.
Totally. I call that shiny object syndrome. If you haven't done that personal work to really understand what is your vision, what are your guiding principles, core values, things like that, then you're just going to chase the next fastest dollar. And that is just fatal in an organization that can't stay true to the course and really stand for something. And that only clearer in the face of adversity and those challenges. And so if you're someone who just doesn't stop pivoting because there's a challenge, like you're not going to have that really representative brand or people understanding who you guys are as an organization, what sets you apart.
Exactly. And there's fear that's there. If you look at, without saying why and reasons being, the fact on the ground is certain entrepreneurs, so people of color, women, when you're starting a business, you don't typically have the raise 250,000, 300,000 friends and family, 3 to 5 years, you'll see if you're successful. When I started my business, day 2, I had to feed the family. And so if you're on this trajectory for a while and it's not bringing home money for your household, you start to panic. Right? If you're not certain of yourself and why you're here and your whole family's on board, it's a scary situation. And are you willing to eat rice and beans for a while? Are you willing to have some of the accoutrements of life that you're normally used to or you want to attain to? And so the entrepreneur life it's a humbling life, and it's a life of understanding, all right, stay your course and be okay to let go when it's really not working, not just because you're scared.
That's a really great point. So can you tell us about your self-development journey? If that is the first part of becoming a great entrepreneur, what things did you focus on in growing yourself and understanding yourself better that has really helped make you a great entrepreneur today?
Wow. So years ago, a pastor of mine, Troy Good, he said a couple of things. He said, you have to understand your purpose. And he recommended this book called How to Live Your Life on Purpose by John Stanko. No, I wrote this book on purpose so that you could know yours by John Stanko. And just understanding purpose, that was very key. So my purpose statement is to develop and teach solutions that build wealth. And I'm a person of faith. So when I look at wealth in a very holistic and also spiritual perspective as well. And so that was key, because if I didn't understand me being in a country where there's so many boxes to check and someone wants you to fit in a box so you can go to this program or that program, it can be maddening. And so if I didn't do that first, I wouldn't have been able to survive the entrepreneurship journey. So that's been the biggest key for me, I'd say, Brittany.
You would identify as some breakthroughs or really key moments that generated insight for you that changed the way that you show up in your business or in your life. So along this journey, we already talked about there are these key obstacles that show up for us, and that maybe the fear comes up first, right? But we decide that the only path is through it, to put yourself through it, and that's where some of that self-development really happens. About as you did that work on your purpose, as you got aligned in that way and you kept moving forward in your business because you had that faith and you knew this is the impact I want to make on the world. What were some of those breakthroughs, or even just start with one? What was one really key breakthrough along the way that you were like, hey, I thought it was going to happen this way or look this way, but actually it's going to be this way?
Wow. I would say that one of the key breakthroughs for me was, like I said, I'm a person of faith, and the best business book I've ever read is the Bible. And it sounds strange, but a lot of the famous quotes you hear, it's all in scripture. And for me, there's a scripture that talks about the parable of the talents. And like a king was going away, he gave his servants 1 5, 1 2, and 1 1. I hope I'm not mixing up the numbers. And the one with 5, he took what he was given and he made something of it. 1 was 2, did the same. The one with 1 complained and did nothing. And, his was taken away and given to the one with the most. What does that all mean for me? I recognize that I have been given who I am. Everything that I was created to be is for a reason. And I have to use that for that purpose. And it doesn't belong to me. It was a gift from God for me to give to the world and to make the world a better place. And so that takes a lot of pressure off of me, because it's like having a 9-to-5 job where if the lights go out, you go to the owner of the business and say, your lights are out. And so if my business in prayer, if something's going wrong, I pray and say, wait, your business is going wrong. How should I fix this? So that was huge for me, just being able to make that mind shift. The other obstacle, I thought I'd be making a lot more money than I am now. And I thought that we would have been doing a lot more than we're doing now. And then when I recognized that, I wanted that for myself. I wanted to have a certain status. Folks say, are you successful? They look at your car, They look at the school your kids go to. In Rhode Island, you say you live in Providence, they ask you which parts of Providence, and that gives you a profile, right? But for me, I flipped that around and I thought, how can I give more? And so we've been intentional givers in our household, whether it's money, time, talent. And I find, Brittany, that the more I give, the more I receive. The more I share, the more I learn. And I think that's the second biggest thing for me, was where I realized that as much as you talk, you're really doing this for you. How do you flip that around? And that, led to doing revenue sharing with the team because I'm giving more. That led to what I do for IEL. Sometimes the classes are free. That's just giving more. And I find the more I give, it's just sowing seeds that I know I will reap, and I have been reaping as well.
Gosh, that is so beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared that. Giving is receiving.
Absolutely.
It's so true. And this is, I find, people are on two sides of the fence when it comes to this, especially in business. You could really, when you start to interact with someone, you can really feel like what they're about. But I love how you took it to the next level and you recognized, hey, there was like a little bit of ego here for me. How do I flip this and actually make it work for me? Because we can't deny, like, we live in a world of material things. Like, money is energy. Like, you do need it to put food on. So you can't live in total low land about it and just, it'll just come. You have to do things to show up. But I love that you stay true to, it brings us back to your purpose overall, that it is ultimately to give back and to contribute and to share this with people who maybe didn't have the benefits of learning from family members who were entrepreneurs, right? And growing up in that context. So that's a beautiful thing. There is so much ego in business.
Mm-hmm.
Is so much of that. Oh, what part of town do you live in? What car do you drive? Where do your kids go? I really feel you there. And I feel as an entrepreneur, there's so much pressure to show up and say, yes, my business is successful. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to blame social media and all of that, but I don't think that's really the root of the problem. You say that it is. Where do you think that comes from?
Unfulfillment of purpose. Really, because we have one of the saddest things in life is that we have people walking around not knowing who they are and why they're here. And so, yes, social media and media in general projects what you're supposed to be, right? You remember that J.G. Wentworth commercial? I want my money and I want it now. Or get the slimmer you. You have all of these things that say this is who you're supposed to be. The anecdotal American dream, right? American dream, which is house, white picket fence, 2.5 children, right? There's these boxes. And I think it is not knowing your own box. And maybe you don't have a box. Maybe you have a circle, right? Maybe you have a star. And if you don't know yourself, then you're going to be just twisting and shifting with every new wind, every new fad that comes about. And I think that helps with driving the ego, because if me winning is, if that's it, how much money is in my bank account, then all right, I'm going to get as much money as possible. If me winning is being able to say a certain statement, all right, I'm going to be driven and get that statement. If masculinity is defined as having a certain swag and a certain bravado and speaking a certain way, and speaking, I have to do the thumb, emphasize my point, and I have to hold my hands together, then of course you're going to do that. And unfortunately, when folks do that, and those who aren't there yet will look at you and say, you're just showing off anyway. So though there's this whole, it just flips on itself, where the more you try to attain to what society says you're supposed to be, the higher you ascend, the worse it is for you, because you're actually not being true to.
What a really great point. I'm a psychologist by training. And so I was reading this.
Oh, you should have told me that before we started. Oh.
But I was reading about the percentage of people currently experiencing anxiety and depression, and just the increase of that over COVID times. And again, like, this is a place where people talk about social media being a problem, the comparisonitis, right? Seeing what other people have and just really seeing their curated image of their life. And we know chaos, to use your word, right? And so then it just doesn't look, it'll never be a nice comparison where you feel like you're winning. But you have a great point that it's so easy to get lost in all the marketing and all the messaging and all the media if you don't have a strong purpose really tying you down, like holding you to something, keeping you grounded in what you really speaks to you and what's meaningful for you.
Absolutely.
So part of what we do on this show is we share stories that aren't so perfect and beautiful, because I want to be a place where people can have a conversation about when things haven't gone well. There's so many leaders in like are struggling alone because they don't feel like they're allowed to show up and say, yeah, I'm a business owner, but I don't feel successful. Tell us about what you think is your biggest weakness or something that's holding you back.
Oh, wow. Biggest weakness and something that's holding me back. Well, I wouldn't say my biggest challenges. It's a weakness if you don't recognize it and you're doing nothing about it. But it's a challenge if you recognize it and you're actively working on it. And wow, you want me to be vulnerable, huh? Wow, good Lord. I would say...
I put these questions to you in advance.
Yeah, I guess that would be it. Email. Oh, geez, you could just abolish email altogether. That's my number one biggest weakness there, replying to email. And I would say it is affirmation, being confident, not wanting to fail. I think that's the best way to say it. And I validate not failing by getting affirmation and confirmation in that path. And I don't know if that a lot of people have that same issue, but just not wanting to fail. I live in Providence, Rhode Island. I have probably one of 3 Black-owned tech companies in the state, and not wanting to fail, especially if you've tasted failure. This is number 3. I left a large company, Dell EMC, was just EMC at the time, doing real estate and then real estate tech just when the bubble popped. That was a colossal failure. You talk about getting in at the wrong time in real estate. A few years after, I did the entrepreneurship gig again, and that failed. And failure was, your family needs food to eat. That's horrible. And then this time when we went out again, I say we because it's a family choice, right? And in 2016, June 23rd, 2016, I resigned, or I left my last corporate gig, and not wanting to fail. And then the next week realizing that, hey, you're failing again because you totally misunderstood the market. That can be paralyzing. And I can think of, as I'm writing software, literally in a corner in the basement, I did fit that profile, and saying to my wife, am I going to fail again? And so that is one of the most difficult things. And how I overcome that is what I said before. It's not my business anyway. And so in prayers, like, hey, I feel you telling me to do this, Lord, and it doesn't seem to be giving me the results that I expected. What's wrong? What should I do to change this? And that's really given me the peace when I needed it and the encouragement. And yeah, so that's my biggest thing, is just that fear of failing. And that can drive me to work too hard. I once upon a time, I worked 7 days a week. I remember in 2018 when we had a contract with the city and state with IEL, I literally would get into Sprout Co-working. Shout out to Sprout Co-working, amazing space. And I'll get there before everyone and I'll turn the lights off because I was running literally 2 companies. So that drive is, you cannot fail. You cannot fail. All eyes are on you. You cannot fail. So that can be difficult. And so I have to remind myself, who am I? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Am I meeting my metrics? Is my wife still smiling? And because if your wife's not smiling, it doesn't matter. My wife's not happy. I could have $1 billion. What's the point? Who am I going to share with? And
right. That's on your dashboard. Like, is wife smiling?
Is wife a happy wife, happy life? That is 100% true. And yeah, that was it. I don't think I've ever spoken about that publicly before, but feels good. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you being willing to share that. I think it's an important story to tell. Most people I have on the show, myself included, I remember the 7 days a week when you start and you're like, no, like, this is when you hustle. This is when you grind. Like, this has to happen.
Right.
And then also acknowledging that you have these other big responsibilities, your family, your wife. There are days where managing that and trying to figure out what does balance look like feels wild. You feel like you're drowning, right? Like you're not doing enough in either department to make it happen. And then never, like, you're a person too, right? That you have your own things that you need to be happy and to show up fully and give back.
And that can get lost.
It does get lost. But like you said, if you have this strong sense of purpose, there's something that you can always come back to. It's something that you can put in and that can ground you again. So I want to ask you then, what is that number one behavior that got you to where you are today, but will hold you back to where you're going?
Wow. That got me to where I am today, but will hold me back to where I'm going. Wow. I think it's this. Because that's an interesting question, right? If it got you to where you are, why wouldn't it keep you going? I've heard folks say in different circles, Keno, you're too nice. And for me, language is a huge thing. I am colonial British trained in education. So nice is a good word, but in an American context, nice means you give too much, you can be taken advantage of. And so taking it from that perspective, I think what I did getting here was that I would give to sacrifice, to the point of sacrifice. I would, even if I'm not wrong, I would still give and give, because everything we do is very people-centered. And I think going forward, if I'm not cognizant of, is the engagement one that the person is trying to manipulate me, whether it's a client, a colleague, whatever. If there is intent to take advantage of the niceness, if you will, that can hurt the business. You can leave a lot of money on the table when you didn't have to. You can lose deals when you didn't have to. And so I think being conscious of how I give of myself is very important. I remember once upon a time, I would meet with clients, even non-paying clients, whatever time of day. I used to meet with a couple financial counseling at 6:30 in the morning. I'd drive over to their house, we'll talk, dining room table, help them balance their budget, talking about things like that, or late at night, or giving at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I would just give and give. And my family would suffer for it because I'm taking time from them. And I can't do that going forward, because at the end of the day, what shall it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul, right? Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Beautiful. So you give so much, and we've established how that's so central to your purpose and the impact you want to have on the community. But what you're realizing is that maybe now there needs to be a boundary with it.
Yes, boundaries, absolutely. That's the word.
But a boundary and a giving that feels good for you, that maybe is still aligned with the mission, and that ultimately creates the same impact. I know for me, like, I have a 10% rule that 10% of my time is always giving back. There's a way that I have to do that though, because the demand is way higher than 10% for that discounted or pro bono work. So I look at it for impact. Mm-hmm. And I think, okay, if I'm donating my time, how can I make sure that with only this amount of time that I create the greatest impact with that? So there's ways to look at how to give back that can create that meaning and be totally aligned with who you are, which is you want to give to everyone.
Exactly. And just hearing you say that, it reminds me that we have to, when we're giving back, we don't have to do that in isolation. So we don't have to be the only person doing this one journey by ourselves. Find like-minded co-conspirators and give back together, whether it's through your church or some other charitable organization, or even a for-profit organization that's giving back. Just find a group that's doing what drives you passion-wise, and just run with that herd. And so that will amplify the impact.
Completely. Yeah, I spend a lot of time at SEG, Social Enterprise Greenhouse, and they already have a great structure, right? Mm. All of it. I can just come in and do the parts that I'm best at in it, for sure. So thanks for me. So Keno, how can people find you? How can they learn about the Mullings Group? How can they learn about EIL?
IEL. So that's all right. So the IEL. That's all right. So the Mullings Group, themullingsgroup.com. Do not go to mullingsgroup.com. Mullingsgroup.com is owned by Joe Mullings. I get a lot of his email. Actually, we had a conversation like, Joe, I'm getting your emails. And we laughed about it. He's a white guy in Florida, and we're not related at all. But themullingsgroup.com and eleadership.org. And so you can also find me on LinkedIn/in/K Mullings. And we do software development, web, mobile, and desktop. And for IEL, if you're looking to grow or start your venture, we'll be there to help you. Next Tuesday, we're starting Bootstrap Bootcamp for tech founders. It's about lifting tech founders from a business development perspective, but from what software are you building? So understanding that we have the expertise to do that, because that's what we do on both sides of the fence. So that's next Tuesday.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. If you have any questions for Keno or myself, reach out to me on my contact page and I will get it to the right Keno Mullings.
All right. Take care, Al. Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us this week on Eye Openers. Make sure to visit BrittanyDrozd.com/podcast for this week's show notes. And if you found value in today's episode, I would so appreciate you giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. This all helps to support the show.